Lately, my flat has started to feel like a strange kind of hotel. Friends fly to the UK to sightsee, stay a few nights, and before they go, they always end up telling me something. It usually happens late at night, after the tea, after we've finished laughing about work, relationships, the usual adult life complaints, when the room goes quiet and the radiator starts making that ticking sound. It was already dark by 4:30 when she arrived. Late autumn in the UK always feels unfinished, like the days forgot to fully happen. The sky was a low, damp grey. Her suitcase wheels dragged across the pavement outside my flat, then stopped. When I opened the door, she hugged me hard, the kind of hug that lingers half a second too long. Inside, the radiator ticked and clicked. I made tea. She stood by the kitchen window and watched the rain bead against the glass. We talked about normal things first. Flights, work, food, the price of groceries, the way British buses never come when you need them. Then, almost absent-mindedly, she said, "You remember my brother? The one who did his military service down south?" I nodded. She didn't look at me when she continued, "He still doesn't like talking about Ghost Month." I laughed. "He's that type?" She gave a small smile. "He wasn't. That's the thing." She sat down at the table, wrapped both hands around her mug, and started from the beginning. "He told me this in pieces over the years," she said. "But when I put them together, it's like the ghost kept following his uniform." The radiator sighed. Outside, the streetlight flicked on, and in her brother's voice, she began, "I was just some skinny kid when I first went in. You know how army horror stories usually start after you enlist? Mine started the day I was assigned my first real unit. It was 2017. I just finished engineer school. We threw our packs on an old army truck, metal benches rattling, everyone pretending not to be scared. The truck growled its way through South City streets and rolled up to the camp gate of a certain engineer battalion. The guard leaned in to talk to the officer up front, like it was nothing important. "Oh, by the way," he said, "your company counselor from 520, he passed away on Friday." The officer's face changed. "Another one," he muttered. He turned back to us and spoke in that low voice officers use when they don't really want the words to exist. "Half a month ago," he said, "a warrant officer from that company hanged himself in the supply warehouse. Now the counselor's gone too. Same unit." Everyone went quiet for a moment, then started talking again, louder than before. That was my welcome to 520 Engineer Company. On the way in, the older guys gave me the edited version. The warrant officer had gotten tangled in some kind of relationship disaster. One night, he went into the warehouse and didn't walk out. A senior soldier found him. The counselor, the political officer in charge of morale, got shredded by higher-ups afterwards. They blamed him for not guiding the man properly, for not preventing it. Every mistake became his fault. Every report, another nail. Then, one weekend when the company commander went on leave and the counselor was acting commander, he went into his office with his service pistol and fired once. They repainted the wall again and again. The stain kept bleeding through. The worst part was that it was the same senior who had found both bodies. And even before that, the soldier had had one more strange task. He and the warrant officer had been cleaning out the officers' quarters. In the back of a cabinet, behind old uniforms and dusty folders, he'd found a small ancestral tablet, a memorial for a young girl. "Sir," he'd said, "there's a girl's memorial tablet back here." The warrant officer had snapped, "Don't start that superstitious garbage. Take it out and burn it with the trash." So he did. After that, the warrant officer died. Then the counselor. After that, the unit stopped feeling like just concrete and steel. It felt watched, like the building had started paying attention. By the time I marched through the gate, 520 was already known as the Haunted Company. The day I actually reported to the company, it wasn't just paperwork and yelling. It was the councillor's 7th day memorial. The whole engineer group had several companies, but only ours was allowed to hold a vigil. It felt less like a barracks, and more like a temple. Someone had dropped into the middle of an army camp. In the central courtyard, they'd set up a full altar, incense stuck in fat clusters, curling smoke into the damp air, red candles leaning and weeping wax, plates of fruit, biscuits, instant noodles piled in order. A row of Taoist priests chanted beside the steps, their voices thin and high, bouncing off the concrete. Bells rang in sharp metallic notes. Wooden fish knocked a steady heartbeat. Another soldier fed folded joss paper into a rusty oil drum, sparks jumping. 2 huge army trucks had delivered mountains of joss paper, stacked in 2 golden dunes in the middle of the parade ground. When night fell and they set it ablaze, the flames rose up like a bonfire to the dead, ash swirling up into the sky. It looked like a small ghost festival staged inside a base that pretended not to believe in ghosts. Nobody said they were scared. They just quietly agreed not to go to the bathroom alone after dark. Guys stopped chugging water at dinner. You don't need to announce fear to feel it. 7 weeks later, there was a second ritual. This time the Taoist priest arrived with a huge wok of hot oil. He and his assistants went room by room, sprinkling salt and rice into corners, chanting while they walked. The oil hissed when they flicked it onto thresholds. They circled the barracks like they were tracing a line the dead weren't supposed to cross. We stood against the walls, in our fatigues, pretending to joke, listening to the bells and songs echo down the corridors we slept in. I remember thinking, if I ever wake up at 2 a.m. to that, chanting outside my door, I'm diving under the bed and staying there. The officers hated the haunted reputation. Bad for morale, bad for promotion. So one day, the operations officer decided he was going to fix it with a speech. He gathered us all on the parade ground. "Soldiers guard the nation," he shouted. "We're afraid of what? Of stories, of shadows. The dead can't hurt you. Tonight I'll sleep in the councillor's room myself, to prove there's nothing here." The councillor's room, the one where the shot had echoed. He went up there that night with his bedding like a hero, walking onto a stage. He lasted less than 10 minutes. He came back down white-faced, eyes too wide, and told the duty NCO and the guard, "Do not say a word about this to anyone. Do you understand?" They nodded. Of course, by the next day, everyone knew. He never offered to prove anything again. A few days after that, I drew my first night corridor watch in that building. New guy privilege, 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. The corridor was long and bare, lit by humming fluorescent tubes that made everybody's skin look grey. Doors on both sides, all closed. The air smelled like detergent, metal bunks, and something slightly sour that never really left. I stood by the railing with my rifle, trying not to stare too long at the end of the corridor, where the darkness thickened just a little more than it should. After a while, the duty NCO opened the office door and jerked his chin. "Come stand in here," he said. "Mosquitoes are bad tonight." We both pretended that was the only reason. I stood just inside his door, so I could still see the hall. The office felt brighter somehow. The light was warmer, the air less still. We talked about stupid things. Food, who snored the loudest, whose girlfriend sent the nicest snacks, anything mundane we could grab onto. Around 1:45 a.m. we heard it. Click, clack, click, clack. Both our heads turned at the same time. The sound came from halfway down the corridor, a door handle rattling over and over, like someone with cold hands trying to get in. "I'll check," I said. My legs didn't agree, but I went anyway. The sound led me to a door with a chair jammed up under the knob from inside. The door was slightly ajar. The chair had slipped. Every time the loose handle bounced, it hit the wood with a little clack. I pushed the chair tight against the knob, made sure the door was held, and the sound stopped. For a moment the silence felt worse. I walked back into the office. The duty NCO was staring at me like he'd seen a ghost on me. "Don't run around," he snapped, then lowered his voice. "Which door?" "The one with the chair under the handle," I said. "The loud one. I just wedged it properly." His face drained. "That room," he said slowly, "is the counselor's room. The one he died in. The one they'd had to force open the first time, and never properly fixed. There was nothing to say to that." He didn't yell. He just went out to wake up his replacement early. You could tell he wanted to hand off the night like it was a hot potato. The new duty NCO came in, older, heavier, trying to look bored. "Stand here with me," he said. "Outside's full of bugs." We went back to pretending the mosquitoes were the only vampires. We stood side by side behind the desk, the clock dragging. The fluorescent light buzzed above us. The building breathed around us in creaks and clicks. Around 2:30 a.m. we heard another sound, gentler this time. A circular scraping, faint but clear, coming from down the corridor. The older NCO frowned. "You hear that?" "Yeah," I said slowly. "Sounds like when you swirl a lid on a teacup." He stared at me. "You hear it too." We listened. Scrape, scrape. A small tap, porcelain on porcelain. Then footsteps, soft, deliberate steps, moving down the hall. I grabbed my rifle and stepped out. "Halt! Password!" I shouted. The footsteps sped up, turning into a light run toward the far end, where the laundry rack stood. I chased, boots pounding on the concrete, voice echoing. When I reached the racks, the sound stopped. No doors opening and no shapes moving, just rows of empty poles and the smell of detergent. When I turned back, the duty NCO was there behind me, breathing a little too fast. We walked back together. As we passed the counselor's room, the window screen suddenly dropped from its frame and slammed against the sill with a metallic crash. We both flinched, like we'd been slapped. Later, when I'd been there long enough for people to stop censoring themselves, an older soldier told me the counselor had had a habit. He loved tea. He'd pour it, then take the lid and swirl it around the rim of the cup, scratching porcelain on porcelain, then tap the lid lightly, 2 or 3 times, before drinking. Exactly the sound we'd heard. After that, little things happened so often they stopped feeling like accidents. A call light going off in an empty room. The smell of cigarette smoke where nobody was smoking. A door that refused to stay open or refused to stay shut. Eventually, the 520th was disbanded. The old buildings were knocked down, rebuilt, repurposed. The place is a public park now. Sometimes I wonder if anyone's ever sitting on the grass there at dusk, feeling like they're being watched from nowhere and thinks, weird. If they hear a faint, delicate ceramic scraping sound, I hope they walk a little faster. I stayed in uniform. A few years later, in 2023, I was at the military academy as an education NCO, the big brother in charge of a handful of cadets in an old dormitory building. Block A. Long narrow rooms, metal double bunks on either side, lockers lined up like teeth. Everything smelled like sweat, detergent, and the rubber of cheap sandals. Block A had a story too. Years before, a senior cadet had killed himself there. Another love story gone rotten. He'd done it in the bathroom at the end of the hall, using the water pipes in a way people tried not to describe. We, the NCOs, didn't tell the new cadets. There was no point giving 30 boys extra nightmares. But we all knew. In the middle of training, there's something called Family Day. Parents come, bring food, take photos, fuss. Sometimes girlfriends come too, clutching plastic bags full of snacks and drinks. For a few hours, the campus stops being a training ground and looks like a normal university. On October 2023, we had our 3rd family day of that cycle. By late afternoon, the families had gone. The cadets came back up to the dorm carrying leftover fruit and drinks full of sugar and stories. The place felt warm, human. One of my cadets, a small kid we all called Ben, didn't look warm at all. He sat on his bunk with his hands in his lap, shoulders pulled in like he was trying to disappear. I sat down next to him. "What's up?" He didn't look at me. "Sergeant, did something happen in this building before?" My stomach did a small, unpleasant flip. "Yeah," I said. "Years ago, a senior here died. Personal reasons." "Because of a girlfriend?" he asked. His voice cracked on the word. "Something like that." He went quiet. Later I found out that his girlfriend had chosen that day, of all days, to show up and tell him it was over. Maybe there's something particularly cruel about getting your heart broken on a day everyone else is eating fried chicken with their mom. Lights out came. The room dimmed. Whispers turned to sighs. One by one, the metal bunks creaked and stilled. Somewhere past midnight, somebody shook my arm. "Sergeant," a cadet whispered. "Ben's not right." I got up and went to his bunk. He was lying on his side, eyes wide open, tears soaking the pillow. "Sergeant," he whispered. "I can't move. Please, I can't move." He tried to lift his head. Nothing. His neck stayed stuck. His legs were drawn up at a weird angle, like he was kneeling in midair, and he couldn't straighten them no matter how he tried. It didn't look like a simple cramp. It looked like somebody had picked his body up and put it down wrong. We got 2 cadets to help. Lifting him felt like lifting a sack of wet sand, heavy, limp, then suddenly rigid when his muscles spasmed. We half carried, half dragged him down the hall to the counselor's office. Inside I grabbed the company flag from its stand and draped it over his shoulders. It was a reflex more than anything, something heavy and symbolic to pin him to the world. His eyes rolled. His breathing went shallow. He slipped in and out of awareness, mumbling nonsense. Then nothing. Our counselor, who had seen just about every kind of breakdown a 19-year-old could have, looked rattled. Then he snapped his fingers, ran out, and came back with a scratched-up CD and a cheap player. "The Great Compassion Mantra," he said. "Let's try this." He put the CD in. The intro played, soft, almost soothing. Nothing happened. Then the chanting began. Ben's eyes snapped open. For a heartbeat, it wasn't him looking at us. Something in his gaze was older, sharper, furious. He turned his head toward the CD player and screamed in a voice that didn't sound like his. "Turn it off!" His body exploded into motion. He thrashed against the chair, kicking, twisting, his back arching hard enough to make the wood creak. He was small, maybe 165 centimeters, and skinny, but in that moment, he was stronger than the counselor and me together. We held onto his arms and legs and barely kept him from launching himself onto the floor. We didn't stop the CD. We let the mantra run again and again, the chanting looping over itself. Each time it rose, he would stiffen, shout, struggle. Each time it continued, his resistance frayed a little more. After what felt like forever, he sagged back, limbs shaking, eyes half open, then closed. Silence dropped into the room like a stone. His breathing slowed, his muscles unclenched. He slumped in the chair as if he'd run a marathon in his sleep. We waited, watching him. No more sudden movements, no more strange voice. We let him rest a while, then carried him back to his bunk. He didn't wake when we laid him down, just curled into the mattress and slept. Back in the dorm, one of my other cadets, young, hovered near my elbow. He was the one who always claimed he could see things. Most of the time, I half believed him at best. That night, his face was chalky. "Sergeant," he said quietly, "Ben's bed doesn't look right." I was tired and on edge. "What do you mean?" Young swallowed. "It looks like a wedding bed. Old style, red sheets, red curtains. like a bridal room. I turned and looked. All I saw was the same metal bunk, thin mattress, rumpled blanket, sleeping boy, but Yang was staring at it like it was covered in blood. My scalp tingled. Family day. The old suicide in this building, over a breakup. A young man dumped by his girlfriend in the same place, on the same kind of night. I stepped out into the stairwell with my phone and called my mother. She's always had a knack for this stuff. The kind of person temples don't laugh at. She listened without interrupting while I told her everything. The building's history, Ben's paralysis, the mantra, the way he'd screamed, Yang's bridal bed. When I finished, she sighed. He's bumped into something, she said. There's a female spirit in that building. She died there after being betrayed by a soldier. She's been looking for a husband ever since. My hand tightened on the phone. And the dead senior, she went on, the one who killed himself here, he still wants someone to take his place. 2 different debts, tangled together. She paused, then asked, Family day was today, wasn't it? Yeah. His girlfriend came to break up with him. She did, I said. You can tell. He was in the same pain, she said. Heart wide open, raw. The ghost saw herself in him. That's how these things hook on. She told me something else, quietly. The senior, who died in the bathroom, his legs weren't straight when they found him. There was a pipe, a height problem. His feet couldn't touch the floor properly. He hung bent. Ben's twisted legs, his voice when he begged me to help him move. I wanted to be sick. What do? I asked. Take him to the city god temple, she said. Properly. Soon. Ask the city god to take care of it. Don't try to handle it yourselves. Back in the dorm, one of my other cadets, Yang, hovered near my elbow. He was the one who always claimed he could see things. Most of the time I half believed him at best. That night his face was chalky. Sergeant, he said quietly, Ben's bed doesn't look right. I was tired and on edge. What do you mean? Yang swallowed. It looks like a wedding bed, old style, red sheets, red curtains, like a bridal room. I turned and looked. All I saw was the same metal bunk, thin mattress, rumpled blanket, sleeping boy. But Yang was staring at it like it was covered in blood. My scalp tingled. Family day. The old suicide in this building, over a breakup. A young man dumped by his girlfriend in the same place, on the same kind of night. I stepped out into the stairwell with my phone and called my mother. She's always had a knack for this stuff. The kind of person temples don't laugh at. She listened without interrupting while I told her everything. The building's history, Ben's paralysis, the mantra, the way he'd screamed, Yang's bridal bed. When I finished, she sighed. He's bumped into something, she said. There's a female spirit in that building. She died there after being betrayed by a soldier. She's been looking for a husband ever since. My hand tightened on the phone. And the dead senior, she went on, the one who killed himself here. He still wants someone to take his place. 2 different debts tangled together. She paused, then asked, Family day was today, wasn't it? Yeah. His girlfriend came to break up with him. She did, I said. You can tell. He was in the same pain, she said. Heart wide open, raw. The ghost saw herself in him. That's how these things hook on. She told me something else, quietly. The senior who died in the bathroom. His legs weren't straight when they found him. There was a pipe, a height problem. His feet couldn't touch the floor properly. He hung bent. Ben's twisted legs, his voice when he begged me to help him move. I wanted to be sick. What do? I asked. Take him to the city god temple, she said. Properly. Soon. Ask the city god to take care of it. Don't try to handle it yourselves. Years later, I ended up in P City. New unit, new barracks, new food, same sky. We'd finished basic training and they lined us up to draw lots for assignment. The thing everyone dreaded was getting sent to an offshore island. Stuck out there in the wind, sand, boredom. Anywhere but K-City, I kept thinking. Just not K-City. I stepped up, reached into the box, pulled out a slip and unfolded it with my teeth clenched. Not K-City, I exhaled. The slip said something like 333 Brigade, a unit in P-City. Before I could ask what that meant, a guy behind me peered over my shoulder. "Oh," he said, "Wonjin." I frowned. What's wrong with Wonjin? He laughed without humour. You've never heard the saying, big shock, little shock. But whatever you do, don't end up in Wonjin. He told me about the reputation. Strict commanders, endless drills, a camp called Puguang, with giant characters outside the main building that basically meant shock, carved into stone. People said they'd rather go to K-City or the outer islands than get stuck in that P-City unit. I dodged one kind of bullet and walked straight toward another. By the time Ghost Month came around, I'd learned enough to be appropriately nervous. The guard schedule went up. My name fell neatly into the worst slot. First night shift, 10 p.m. to midnight, on the second day of the 7th lunar month. Lucky me. 2 of my seniors from the company, Squad Leader Chen and Squad Leader Gu, were also on duty that night. In the afternoon we sat under a lazy fan and joked about it. "You guys not scared?" I asked. "I mean, Ghost Month?" Gu smirked. "I'm scared of live ammo," he said. "If a ghost wants to fight me, it has to get in line." I smiled like I believed him. Inside, my stomach was already curling. The post that night was a tiny tin guard shack beside the motorpool. Behind the shack stood an old wooden school desk, the kind with a groove for pencils and ancient chewing gum fossilized underneath. In front of it, a fake parking lot, full of decoy vehicles, silhouettes hunched in the dark like sleeping animals. Beyond that, a low slope covered in wild grass and bamboo, the kind of place snakes loved and humans avoided. I did the perimeter check, stepped into the shack, and reached for my guard watch. My fingers closed on empty air. My heart dropped into my boots. No watch. I'd left it behind in the rush. A dumb mistake, but in the army, dumb mistakes don't stay small. I saw myself already, dragged into some horrible breakfast meeting with the company commander, being asked why I couldn't even carry my equipment properly. I tried calling the company office. The line was jammed, or the phone was off the hook. It wouldn't go through. In the end, I called the duty officer. He was in the operations room. My company commander happened to be right beside him. The duty officer handed him the receiver. I explained, bracing for a shouted lecture. All he said was, "Fine, I'll have Squad Leader Chen bring it to you." He hung up. The wind picked that exact moment to rise. The air shifted from heavy and still to restless. Gusts slammed into the shack, rattling the thin metal walls. The bamboo on the slopes started hissing and squeaking, leaves whipping themselves into a frenzy. Inside the tiny shack, the sound was amplified. The whole thing buzzed under my hands. I could feel the fear creeping up my spine, that tight, prickly feeling like your body knows something you don't. To keep my brain from spiraling, I started humming a stupid children's song under my breath. Daddy becomes the king. Bang. Something hit the outside wall so hard the panel rang. Every hair on my body lifted. I stood there, frozen, then forced myself to think. Animal. It's got to be an animal. Maybe a dog, a cat, very heavy bird. I balled my fist and punched the wall back twice. "Get lost," I muttered, like bravado could cover the terror. Something hit back. 3 hard blows, not scrabbling, not pouring, deliberate, Heavy thumps that shook the shack. Whatever was out there wasn't small. My scalp tingled so violently it almost hurt. My mouth went dry. Then I heard it, on my right side, low on the wall. Scritch, 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 like claws or fingernails dragging upward. The sound moved slowly up the tin, toward the roof. It stopped when it reached the top, right over my head. I could feel it, a weight, a pressure, like someone lying flat on the roof, with their chest pressed to the metal, head hanging down, listening. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I stared straight ahead and focused on not screaming. In the corner of my eye, the side mirror outside caught a sliver of light. A flashlight beam swept across the decoy vehicles. Relief hit me so hard my knees took a second to remember how to work. It was Squad Leader Chen, walking fast, hood up over a sports jacket, cap pulled low. He had earbuds in, music so loud I could hear the faint thump even with the shack walls between us. He stepped up, handed me the guard watch. I grabbed it like it was a holy relic. "Can you hang out for a bit?" I asked. "Just talk. It's creepy tonight." He glanced around the motorpool, then back at me. "I still have maps to draw," he said. "Got to finish them." He hesitated. "You, be careful, okay?" "I will," I said. He didn't move. "Seriously," he said. "Be very careful." Then he turned and walked back into the dark. When his light disappeared, the silence snapped back into place. So did the feeling. That thick, heavy sensation of being watched from more than one direction at once. Like the empty spaces between the vehicles had filled up with something I couldn't see. The air felt crowded. No footsteps, no voices, just that invisible pressure, like standing in the middle of a crowd holding its breath. I reached up under my shirt and closed my fingers around the tiger talisman I wore on a chain. It was a small thing I'd had blessed before enlistment, more out of habit than belief. "Please," I whispered, not sure who I was talking to. "Whoever you are, whatever you are, just stay away from me. I'm just here for 2 hours. That's all. Let me go home." I lifted my head and looked straight out, past the fake parking lot, up the slope of grass. In the beam of my flashlight, a patch of the grass caved in. It was a clean dent, about the size of a person standing there. Nothing moved, but the grass flattened like something heavy had just stepped into it. I swallowed hard enough that my throat clicked. Dog, my brain tried. Maybe there's a dog. We didn't have dogs in the motorpool. The dent stayed there for a long, stretched-out second. Then it began to move back. Not spring up. Not sway in the wind. It slid. The flattened patch retreated like footprints in reverse, step by slow step along the slope, further away. The grass stayed pressed where the weight was, lifted behind it as it went. It moved sideways along the hill, toward a darker part the light couldn't reach. When it slid past the edge of my flashlight's range, it vanished. My legs felt hollow. I leaned back against the old desk so hard it creaked, fingers digging into the wood. In my head, I was screaming every curse I knew. Out loud, all I could do was keep whispering, "Please, please, just let this end." When Squad Leader Gu finally appeared with a brand new recruit in tow, I almost ran to him. I shoved the password sheet and checks into his hands. "All good, all checked," I said, words tumbling over each other. "I'm off." The walk back to the barracks usually takes 15 minutes. I did it in 5, boots slapping the road, not looking left or right. My buddy asked what was wrong when I barged into the room fully wired. "Nothing," I lied, climbing into my bunk in my uniform. "Just tired." The next evening, when my rest shift ended, I woke up to find both Gu and Chen standing by my bed. Gu didn't even say hi. "You absolute idiot," he said. "Good morning to you too," I muttered. What did I do now? He glared. The motorpool was that bad last night and you didn't tell me. My stomach clenched. What happened? He rubbed his arms like he was cold. After you left, the decoy vehicles kept making noise. Bang, bang, bang. Like someone was slapping the metal plates. It went on and on. You heard that and said nothing? I heard plenty, I said. If I told you, would you have slept better? He opened his mouth, then shut it. He didn't have an answer for that. Chen had been silent the whole time. Finally he spoke. I was near your post for a while last night, he said. I didn't go all the way up. I looked at him. Why not? He met my eyes, and for once he looked as young as the rest of us. Because from where I was standing, he said, I could see something on your roof. My throat went dry. What kind of something? He held his hand out flat, palm down, and mimed a body pressed tight to a surface. It looked flesh-colored, he said, like a person with no clothes on, lying flat on top of the shack, clinging to it. He paused. I couldn't see the head, just the body, but it was there the whole time. My mind yanked me back to that sliding sound on the wall, the weight above my head, the way I'd refused to look up. Some things you can talk yourself out of. You can say you were tired, or stressed, or imagining things. When three people experience parts of the same thing from different angles, it stops being imagination and starts being a problem. The next time I had leave, I went straight to a spiritual teacher in P City people went to, when regular explanations ran out. I hadn't even opened my mouth when he rubbed his arms, shivered, and said, Oh, wow. Whatever you brought back from the army. It's strong. I've had goosebumps since you walked in. He sat me down. Tell me, he said. So I did. The shack. The blows, the scraping, and the grass. The thing Chen saw on the roof. The way Gu heard the cars bang like someone was beating them. He nodded slowly, his expression tightening. That's not a wandering little ghost, he said. That's not some random hungry spirit. He brought out his tools, bells, wooden plaques, rolled-up talismans, a bowl of water, incense. He worked around me in circles, chanting under his breath, tapping here, splashing there. At one point my skin crawled like ants were marching under it. At another my head felt briefly light, like I'd stepped off a curb in the dark. It went on long enough that I lost track of time. When he was finally done, he let out a breath. Okay, he said. Better. He reached out and tapped the little tiger talisman at my chest. You're lucky you had this, he told me. Whatever that was, it didn't dare get too close. I walked out into the bright P City sunlight, holding that tiny piece of carved metal, and thought, for something I used to wear out of habit, you're doing a lot of work. At my kitchen table in the UK, my friend's hands had gone still around her mug. The way he tells it, she said, it's not like a horror story. He just lays it out. But every time he gets to Ghost Month, or that bridal bed, or the tea in the counselor's room, his voice changes a little. The radiator ticked quietly. Outside, the rain had gone from heavy to fine, the kind that floats in the air rather than falls. What about now? I asked. Does he still see things? She shook her head. He says he doesn't. He says he stays away from certain places. He doesn't work nights. And he won't ever go back in uniform. She took a sip of tea that had gone cold and grimaced. I topped up both our cups with hot water. The steam curled between us. Somewhere inside the radiator, a bubble of air shifted with a soft, hollow knock. We both jumped, then laughed, a little too quickly. Anyway, she said, wiping at the corner of her eye like it was nothing. That's why he still doesn't like Ghost Month. And in my little UK flat, thousands of miles from every barracks he'd ever stood guard in, I suddenly understood why the room had started to feel like a hotel. People don't just bring suitcases when they visit. Sometimes they bring the things that still won't leave them alone.